From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson here in studio with OSU beat writer Scott Wright. Scott, it's game week. It's a short game week though, because the Cowboys are playing Thursday night. Missouri State comes to town. 7 o'clock start on FS1, and this matchup between Oklahoma State and Missouri State, not exactly the sexiest matchup in the world, but this is a matchup that sort of harkens back to some ghosts of yesteryear. A little bit of trivia, right? These two teams involved with the very first overtime game in NCAA football.
Yeah, it was. It was really strange once I got into to researching it, and it was Division 1A had never had overtime up until 1996 when they finally instituted it, and I doubt anybody expected it to happen in Stillwater that day. An Oklahoma State team that yes, it was Bob Simmons' second year, and they were still building that program, but shouldn't have had any trouble with the Missouri State team that was middle of the road in Division 1AA. The interesting thing, I thought, I asked Del Miller, who was the Southwest Missouri State coach at the time, since changed the school's name. I said, did you know what to expect in overtime? He said, oh yeah, we played 2 overtimes the year before. I was like, oh yeah, 1AA. Okay, but the Oklahoma State players were a little bit more caught off by it. Kenyatta Wright joked that he didn't even remember practicing it during camp. Bob Simmons had said afterwards that he'd called some 1AA, some Division II schools, figuring out how this process worked, what the strategy needed to be. Do you want offense or defense first? How do you want to handle it? So he was somewhat prepared. But probably not expecting to have to do it in the opener against a 1AA team.
I guess those two teams have the trivia answer for the two that played the first game. OSU also has the trivia answer for the team that won the first overtime game in 1A NCAA Division I football. What did these, as you look back on it, I mean, now overtime is a normal part of the game. Since '96, there's been a lot of overtime games. But to still think about that very first time, I mean, what did these guys remember just about the experience? You referenced the point that, within the press box, the in-house PA announcer had no idea it was going to overtime. I mean, fans leaving. What was sort of just the general feel about things that day? It
was really funny. Kenyatta Wright said he remembered. He said it felt like a ton of wasted time after the fourth quarter had ended because the coaches got called out to midfield and they were going over all the details with the head coaches. Now it's such routine that they just send the players out for the coin toss and get on with the game. But yeah, he said it just seemed like forever before they actually broke down and went to start playing and deciding what end of the field they were going to be on and all of those sorts of things. So it was a really complex process at the time, making sure everybody understood what was going to go on. Sean Love, wide receiver for Oklahoma State at the time, talked about not really knowing what the game plan was going to be when you get the ball at the 25-yard line, and at that point they knew that Missouri State had kicked a field goal. They just needed a touchdown, and so they hadn't been able to run the ball well all day, and those receivers who were really talented receivers, but they were in a Bob Simmons offense that was run heavy, and so they were expected to block. And if you go back and watch that final game-winning touchdown, you'll see Sean Love right there on the corner making the stealing block that opens up the angle to the corner for David Thompson to get in and score that touchdown. So it was a unique experience. A lot of guys, there are moments that stuck out to them from the game. They don't remember a ton about it. Obviously, not a lot of good memories in a game that ends up going to overtime against somebody that you should have beaten. R.W. McCorders had a 90-yard punt return that would have tied the game in the fourth quarter. That was called back by a penalty. So a lot of interesting moments that stuck in guys' heads. It was fun to get to talk to them about.
You mentioned some of the names involved in that game, Scott. Cowboys had some talent on that field, which sort of makes me think a little bit about this time around. Everybody's expecting OSU to roll through this. I guess it's one of those cautionary tales. You don't ever want to assume that anybody, even a lower division opponent, is going to be easily beatable, especially in an opening game like this. I don't assume Mike Gundy's trotting it out to his players to say, hey, don't let this happen. But I have to think that's one of those things that, players always have to be mindful of, okay, let's get out here, let's do our thing, let's make sure we take care of business.
Yeah, and since they've changed 1AA to FCS, there have been a lot more FCS wins over FBS teams in the recent years. There were 4 in the opening weekend last year. So this is happening more and more. Everybody remembers Appalachian State over Michigan, that being the one of the really big ones in recent history. There have been a lot of games like that where these teams have pushed significantly more talented programs to the brink, and you don't expect it with the Missouri State team that was 3-9 a year ago, but you never know what can happen, and Oklahoma State's got to be ready for it. They're trotting out a quarterback who's never really taken a live snap when the real bullets are flying, a brand new defense that hasn't been tested yet. So you never know what might happen. Missouri State making some changes on offense, all sorts of crazy things could happen.
All right, we don't want to scare Cowboy fans,
right.
but
no, I mean, I'm still going to predict Oklahoma State to win by 30. I was just saying crazy things could happen.
But it's a good point about those FCS teams. You just never know in this opening weekend. But again, Thursday night, 7 o'clock, FS1. We expect Cowboys to win big, but we'll see what happens in their opener on Thursday night. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.